Hello, my name is Miss Crossley and I'm the curriculum leader for English at Fulford School. I'm going to talk you through in this presentation what you can expect from Year 7 English at school, ways in which you can extend your learning outside of school and ways in which you as parents can support your students in their first year of English. So I'm just going to share my presentation with you. Okay, so you should be able to see now on the screen a series of images. These are from some of the topics that we study in Year 7. We try to cover a wide breadth in our curriculum across Key Stage 3, but in particular in Year 7, ensuring that all our students get an experience of the wider world and other people's experiences beyond perhaps their own. The English department itself is made up of 16 members of staff. Some of our assistant heads teaching in the department, but we also have leaders within English, myself being in charge of Key Stage 4, as well as the department as a whole. Mr. Bond there is in charge of Key Stage 3, so he'll be a useful contact if you have any other queries. And also we have a Key Stage 5 leader as well, which is Miss Ingham. So at each stage through the school, your child will be supported by a Key Stage specialist in English. So I want to talk you through, an overview of what we cover in Year 7, the kind of things that they can expect from their lessons, how we go about assessing students and therefore then setting them appropriately, and how we track their progress across the year and between years to ensure that they are getting the most out of their subject time. So this is an excerpt from our curriculum overview for English. So as you can see, when they start in the very first half term in September, we have an adventure fiction unit, which is part of our transition from primary into secondary. And this focuses really on grammar for writing and how they can use perhaps some of their skills that they've developed at Key Stage 2 and kind of mould that into a very different style of writing. We look at a lot of different extracts from modern and 19th century fiction. And we look at what the key conventions of adventure writing are, how we make it exciting, how we make it engaging. And it's always a really well enjoyed unit, being the first one in, being a writing focus, and really helps us to get to know our students quickly. In the second half term, students then study their first book with us. It's the book Refugee Boy, which is by Benjamin Zephaniah. Follows a young boy in his experience of being a refugee in the UK. And there's some really nice strands there focusing on how we use language for power, how we ourselves can use our voice to make differences and make changes in the world. As well as, again, looking at someone else's experience that perhaps is very different to our own and being able to empathise and kind of understand why it is that someone might feel that way. Moving into Spring 1 then, we have our first speaking and listening unit. So it ties on quite nicely from what we've done in Refugee Boy, because we look at the power of protest and persuasion. So we look at a number of significant speeches from across, again, modern history and kind of 19th century, to understand why language is so powerful and how actually the way that we express ourselves is really important in terms of being understood, being heard and being recognised. And we study a number of key speeches to help us look at that. We have some nice discussions around ideologies and how people present their own opinions and ideas. And they also get a chance then to write and then present, if you like, their own persuasive speech with the class. And it's really nice, again, because students appreciate focusing on real world issues and that some of the questions that are raised from our unit on Refugee Boy are then addressed again in that half term. Then we have another writing unit, Writing the World, slightly different kind of angle here. It's actually, a lot of it is around poetry, written poetry about nature and about celebrating the natural world. But again, there are elements there of that kind of protest and persuasion writing. We look at our role in terms of climate change and preserving our natural world. And we also look at the response that writers have had through history to experiencing nature and being in the natural world and the benefits that can have to us as artists, as creative people. And again, in that half term, there is a mixture of both looking at other people's work and kind of studying how other poets, other writers have shared their thoughts. And also students get the chance to write their own work. Some of it is descriptive, some of it is poetry. And it's really interesting to break down some of their ideas about poetry and how actually it can be anything you want it to be, and it has a real freedom to develop their own personal voice. In summer one, we do what is often the most loved unit by Year 7 students, which is our moving image unit. So effectively it's a film studies unit on the genre of anime. Now, often quite an unusual tack to take. What we do is we study the film Spirited Away, and we look at how shot angles and illustrations and music, as well as storyline, are used to create character, create setting, and therefore create meaning. And the students also learn the cultural kind of expectations and the genre of anime films and how that fits into Japanese culture and why that's so popular now in a Western world. It is a reading unit, so the outcome is analysing how the director has used certain methods, but it's very different to where we study text in that it's much more tangible for students, and I think they get quite excited about studying the different, like say, scenes, angles, colours, music, noises, how different sounds, you know, that are neither music nor speech are used to create a certain atmosphere. And then we finish off the year with Shakespeare. So we study The Tempest at Year 7. Again, it's a speaking and listening unit because the focus really is on engaging with what can be seen as quite a challenging text, and enjoying the comedy really behind that, and the kind of the mystery and the mayhem that is caused in that. And again, our students have a lot of hands-on experience then of Shakespeare. We are the lead associate school for the Royal Shakespeare Company in York. So we do have specialists in department that use active approaches to teaching those kinds of texts. So very much hands-on, practical, getting the chance to be the characters, to kind of be in the moment and imagine what it might be like to be in each of those people's minds, as well as the playful nature of kind of the magic of the time. So like I say, quite a broad structure to our Year 7 curriculum. We like to give them a breadth of what they will experience in English, as well as looking at different times, places and topics. So there's just kind of a bit of a breakdown there on how the skills are assessed. So as I've just mentioned, we have a particular skill focus each half term, whether that be reading, writing or speaking and listening. And there's a little bit of a breakdown of that then on the right hand side for what specifically we are kind of assessing against. So currently, all Year 7s are being taught in their form groups, meaning they are completely mixed ability. It's actually really lovely at Year 7 when they're coming from primary, where they have ultimately been mixed ability, to remain in those kind of pastoral units, and especially for English, you know, which is all about communication and opening up and sharing ideas. I think they really benefit from the grounding of being in a mixed ability group. When the students move up into Key Stage 3 then, so up into Year 8, they are placed into sets. We do this based on a range of data from across the year. As you can see from the fact we assess different skills at each half term, we expect students' progress to kind of fluctuate across the year. We look at a best fit approach for where they're performing. An A set, so in terms of coding, an A set refers to a top set, and a B code to a middle set, and a C code to a lower set. We have multiple sets at each level. So for example, we may have 3 A sets. So it's not a linear setting, it's a diamond structure, and therefore most students, when they go through to Year 8, are in fact in middle sets. The majority of our students are in those B sets. So how do we track this progress? How do we actually go about assessing these students and monitoring their progress across the year? At the start of the year, students are given a sheet like the one that you can see there on the left, and this is stuck on the front of their assessment folders, a green assessment folder that they get. And as you can see there, it just details what the topic task is, the unit, what the assessment type is, and actually specifically what the endpoint task will be. Students are actually assessed formally twice in a half term. So we do a midpoint assessment and an endpoint assessment. The purpose of the midpoint is for them to demonstrate what they have learned at that point, and for the teacher to be able to give feedback and then adjust their teaching to fit, so that they can make sure that it's appropriate, that we're kind of tackling any of those gaps, but also so that the students can reflect and see where it is that they need to improve moving forward. And this sheet's really nice because it allows them then to take track of each of their grades themselves, so they can see straight away on the front of their folders how they are doing in each unit. Students receive a piece of homework from English once a week. It's a 30-minute piece of homework. And what we've done in our department is we have created a booklet for each unit of work. It's an A5 booklet. So for each module that's studied, one homework booklet will be given out, so per half term, with one activity per week to complete. And this will be directed by their class teacher. They do run in order, which is good for students if they need a little bit of help in terms of organisation, but also they develop in terms of the skills that they are kind of consolidating. So if you have a look there, you can see that each activity addresses one of those skills. So for example, task 1 will always be a task around vocabulary, task 2 on wider reading, and so on. So effectively each week of every scheme builds so that the homework tasks are actively kind of not only consolidating, but also extending their learning and their knowledge of the unit. And they do get more challenging as they go on. And if they have any issues or questions, always asking a member of staff, either face-to-face or through the class charts function as well. In Year 7, they also get the opportunity to complete a reader's passport. So we give these out in some of the very first few lessons for Year 7. And essentially it's a reading competition. It's a way of them creatively logging what they're reading, and also again reflecting and kind of absorbing what they've gained from a book. So within their reader's passport, they log which book they've read, who it's by, and then there are kind of prompt tasks for them to choose from to complete for their book. So it might be imagining you are a different character, not the main character, and responding to how that person might feel about the plot in the novel. It might be choosing an alternative ending. It might be that they are imagining the book in a completely different setting or time period. So they're kind of creative responses to their reading. And essentially students fill these out across their first half term. They hand them in to us, and Mr. Bond, head of Key Stage 3, chooses winners, and there is a kind of a prize assembly in November where these are actually shared with students as well. Furthermore, on reading, something obviously as an English teacher is hugely important. Reading is the best way for a student to progress in English. It shows them a variety of experiences of different texts. They have to show resilience because they're trying different things, and they also gain a breadth of language perhaps that they wouldn't come across just in speech alone. And so we do have a number of ways that students can get hold of recommended reading lists that are appropriate for their year group. So the first way is that we have an overall Year 7 recommended reading list. This is put together by our school librarian, and this is available on the virtual learning environment on website. Okay, and all of the titles that are on that sheet are available in the resource centre. What we've also done this year is we have a list just like this, but for each individual unit of work that links to the topic. So it might not be the same type of writing. For example, it might be a poetry anthology, it might be non-fiction text, it might be a short story, but it is linked in some way to what they're learning at that time. So if a student has particularly enjoyed a unit of work, or equally if you're wondering how you can support your student that might be finding a unit of work difficult, there are linked suggested texts there, and they're available from students' class teachers. Okay, that's all kind of I wanted to talk you through in this presentation. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour into what we do in English, and hopefully a flavour of what your student will be doing in their Year 7. I suppose if there are any questions or anything further from that, you can contact myself or Mr. Bond using the email addresses that were previously shown on the slide. Or alternatively to that, there is information on our website page in the English tab, all the information there about Key Stage 3 curriculum. So feel free to have a little look through that if there's anything I haven't addressed initially. Other than that, I hope your student has a wonderful start in English at Fulford, and no doubt I shall be seeing you all very soon. Thank you.